Now it's going. Sorry, this actually shocked me. I've never used this before, but I'm doing it just to record myself at the moment while Matt searches on the internet because his stupid phone doesn't have voice recorder!
I heard that.
Of course you heard it.
Yes, I did. Hello, and welcome to the Irrelevant RockCast with me, Mattanza, Mafia-Fedora, and he,
Mr. Dupont. Live from Matt's kitchen in Queens at the moment.
Yeah. And now, we're pretty much here today to talk about the topic at hand, which is why we're starting this podcast. And yeah.
This is an idea that we've actually thought about for a few weeks, but because of assignments, societies, jobs, hobbies, and going to gigs, we've had a lot of distractions, but now that it's the Christmas holidays, we've now actually got time to do this. So we thought we'd start episode 1 here with you guys now and hopefully share it for you. And we're doing this for ourselves as well because we enjoy it. This is something, like I said before, we've wanted to do for a while. And we have our reasons, and we plan to do this for a long time.
Yeah. And basically, we're on the University of Winchester campus, and the city itself has the right sort of aesthetic to be, you know, the home to a uni with a rock society, but ironically, the best fitting city for that kind of environment. Excuse me. Basically, it has no such society dedicated to rock music, or metal, or blues, or the alternative stuff. Mainly, it's just because we are mostly, and I say this as a generalization, but not with any intent, we are on a campus mostly filled up with 65% girls who are interested mainly in teeny bopper music, and it is just not really us being in the right environment with the right masses, if you like. We don't have masses of people that we expect to see in this setting, don't we?
Very much so. When I was at college around 2010, you know, wearing band shirts, being into rock bands and going to download, it was very much a common thing, but that was kind of our generation. Guitar music was more popular back then. And it's interesting actually, because last year when I went to download, there was a lot more older people there than younger. And I think that shows how, like, Guitar Hero is so, like, out of fashion at the moment in terms of music in general. It's still around, it's still popular, but there's no... It's not on the radio anymore, you know, and there's very few, and the ones that are usually hipster kind of bands.
Yeah.
You know, we'll talk about that at a different time, but still, you were going to say about, like, Winchester in general?
Yeah, Winchester in general. Like, if you take a look at the themes for Iron Maiden songs, what are they? They are literature, so famous poems or books, or films, if you take a look at how Number of the Beast was inspired by, say, Damien Omen 2, and the tagline for it, which actually is narrated as it opens up. Then you've also got history. They do a lot of stuff about how war in general, like the Crimean War with the Trooper, Run to the Hills, which is, I think, about, get it right, the Native Americans fighting against invaders like Colonel Custer's men, and then also the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Did I mention that? Yeah, like, these are themes that just fit into Winchester so perfectly, because it's the birthplace of this country, it's the birthplace of the English language, and all the great literature, such as Jane Austen, and, well, yeah, just take a look around the place. It's even host to Philip Pullman's Dark Materials, and how on earth can it not have more people on a rock spectrum coming to study here?
Or there being a rock society.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, I've spent the last 10 years of my life in Southampton, and...
Entertainment haven.
Very much so, and at both Southampton and Solent universities, and a lot of other universities across the country, there's rock societies. There's not one in Winchester. That doesn't... I've been told by people, Alex, you should start one, but I thought to myself, I would much rather start this RockCast podcast with you, Matt. I thought it'd be more fun, and it's something that we can do on a regular basis, and let's be honest, starting a society would be awesome, but it's a lot more work than two people sat in a kitchen.
Yeah. And obviously, as pressures, we just don't have time to actually put all that together as a proper society, and how do we? So, yeah, basically you get my point. I mean, Saxon, a band, which are literally named after the founders, like the original Wessex dynasty of King Alfred the Great, who made this city. Sorry if you're not that interested in history, but you get the point. A lot of metal themes, then they do tend to fall around those sort of lines. Plus, speaking of Saxon, the song Crusader. Winchester is a very holy city, so yeah, you would expect something of, like a more dramatic influence of the Crusades, especially seeing as how history is one of the main subjects here, and a lot of history students, to my knowledge, are actually big metal fans. So yeah, it's one of those things. How do you miss the mark on that? This is one of the reasons, in fact, it's the main reason why we put together this podcast, just because we feel the need, don't we, Alex, that we just need to kind of get a gathering of, everything that we feel as people in an environment that feels natural to our being. We need to just have a space to express our own interests, don't we?
Very much. I think you're absolutely spot on with everything you're saying.
Thanks.
And, rock music isn't totally out of the picture here at the University of Winchester. We do have detention on Mondays, which is more Reading Festival kind of music. I do like Reading. I've never been, but the reason why I don't go is because I'm not a 16-year-old girl. I'm sorry if that offends anyone. But, and I'm sorry if you do go to Reading, you don't have to be a 16-year-old girl to go. It's just what I've been told by a lot of people who have been, who are into the same kind of music I am. And also, download Sonosphere, Bloodstock. It has a lot more appeal to me, and as it does to Matt as well. We have Detention, which is still some kind of rock music of some sort. We've also obviously got a lot of musicians here who study in Winchester. They do music, but it's not necessarily hard rock.
Yeah.
And we do have odd people walking around in band shirts, but it's usually quite surprising overall, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, generally we see that sort of stuff in the railway, and we imagine, that's the right sort of setting. It's where Frank Turner's performed, who actually is a native to this area.
Totally. Also, Skindred have played there a million times.
Yeah, and actually, you said somebody who was I'm trying to remember the name of the front man that performed there a bit ago. Something about, did you say an Iron Maiden ex-front man?
Oh, Blaze Bailey. Yeah, he plays in Winchester every year.
Yeah, Blaze Bailey, and I can't believe I missed that.
Oh, he's actually playing there next year, Matt. I believe, 26. Actually, or is it? It's either in a few weeks or next year, but we could potentially go. But it all depends on you and your funds. Explain your situation to the people.
Yeah, basically, Alex here is the experienced gig goer. Me, on the other hand, I've never really had, as much of an opportunity because my mum and just general finances with our family, we never really had that much just to spend gigs. So yeah, my story of being to uni here is a bit of a rags to riches, and then somewhat beforehand. We were at a decent high point, but we didn't have much money to spend on too many luxuries. So actually, my first gig was in Southampton a few weeks back, seeing Skindred. And later on, the night before my birthday, best night of my life, best pre-birthday present that you ever gave me, Alex, it was Judas Priest. So yeah.
And both train journeys away, which is something, if you don't go to enough gigs, guys, your train journey's away. You are 20 minutes from Southampton, an hour from Portsmouth, an hour from London. Okay, we know that train travel is expensive, we know etc., but it's such a relief. Literally, lately we have had assignments up our ass, and going to Judas Priest in Portsmouth was so refreshing to get away from the laptop. You spend 7 hours on your laptop doing work, and then let's go to Judas Priest. You become inspired, you become influenced, you feel refreshed, and you feel happy.
Yeah.
And that's it, and that's why I go, really. It keeps me going.
Basically, I always knew my stuff. I went straight from the beginning. I sought out music that just spoke to me, and I studied it religiously. So, yeah, that was kind of my thing. Music is ultimately something that has just been there, and music, because Stephen Hawking will tell you sound is actually a concept that exists within everything, music is the most universal art form there is. So, this is actually something that's really big and important to me and you, and we just need to, we want to just get everything out there so that we can actually try and make everything as best as possible. But gigs were never easy to come by where I used to be. I just didn't always have the money, and one of the things that's actually preventing me from going to darkness in a bit is because I just need to try and make sure that I have everything sussed financially, which isn't always the case. And
And also, you're saving for Download Festival.
Yeah, which is basically, judging by the lineup here that we've got, I actually want to make sure that every band that I get to see, I mean, there are many bands there that I'm not sure I'll ever really get the chance to see again. I mean, Sabbath was said to do a final farewell tour, and this is probably the one chance I'm going to get to see the Beatles of heavy metal play themselves. Maiden are there, as are Nightwish, Motorhead, Rammstein, Korn, and they're just headliners, along with Disturbed and Deftones, and it's just a lineup that is worth saving for.
Very much so. I think if you're like a newcomer to Download, like Matt, or to just a lot of classic rock in general, or, like you said, a final opportunity to see certain bands at Donington, like Maiden and Sabbath especially, go. You will have an incredible weekend. I, on the other hand, when I found out about the headliners, I wasn't excited. They are incredible bands, but the problem is I've gone to Download several times over the years, so I have seen them all on a number of occasions. I'm very lucky to say that. I spent a few years working, and I spent a lot of my wages on gigs. Bands like Sabbath and Maiden have been touring regularly around the UK, since about 2010. 2012. I know 2012 was when Sabbath got back together. For me, out of the three, the best headliner, well, the one that I'm most excited about seeing is Rammstein. The reason being is because Sabbath are amazing. They are the, like I said, Beatles, pioneers of heavy metal. Yeah. But the thing is, I've seen them 3 times since they got back together, and on each occasion they've done the exact same thing. Yeah. What I mean is, the songs they're going to play. Ozzy is amazing. He's great to look at. He's a great performer, but he's not that versatile. If you get what I mean. Yeah. With Maiden are incredible. I loved seeing them 2 years ago at Download when they did Maiden England, which was the 1988 Seventh Sunset. Yeah. However, their new album, The Book of Souls, I'm hit and miss on. It's obviously good music. I just feel like it's too long. And there's only about 2 or 3 songs on the album that I would want to hear live amongst the classics from the 80s and Brave New World, Dance of Death era. Yeah. Rammstein, however, 10 out of 10 live band. Like, it's not just the show. It's not just the music. Yeah. It's the professionalism. Yeah. They sound incredible, look incredible. You can tell that, I don't know, but there seems to be something about the Germans, like even German football team, German metal bands, they're just really professional. Yeah. You can tell that there's no fucking around on stage, like there is with Motley Crue sometimes, and, I went and saw, rest in peace, I went and saw Scott Weiland in September. He did a bit of not unprofessional things on stage. Yeah. Rammstein are probably Rammstein and Muse are the 2 most professional live bands I think I've ever seen. Yeah. Maiden are very much professional as well, but at the moment, in terms of live, in my opinion, Rammstein ripped Maiden to pieces, and anyone who saw them in Download 2013 agreed, in our camp of 12 people. Good memories. Yeah. So basically what I was saying was, when I found out about the headliners, I wasn't really that thrilled. I was a bit, samey. I would like to have seen Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam have never played Download. Like, who else? Tool have never... No, Tool... The last time that Tool played at Download was 2006, so it would have been 10 years. Long time. Green Day have never played Download. I know they're more of a Reading band, but I reckon the Donington crowd would love them. I know a lot of people... Okay, everyone has an opinion on Green Day, right? Whether it's... I love the 90s, or American Idiot killed them, sellouts, or whatever. But we know for a fact that if Green Day played to Donington for 3 hours, 2.5 hours, playing a greatest hits set from all eras of that band, it'll be mass sing-along. And the people who say they fucking hate them will still watch them and still sing along. Yeah. Because that's what everyone who watches Limp Bizkit does. and Korn
Exactly.
and Metallica. So it's like, there you have it. I got excited when I found out Deftones were sub-headlining because I've never seen them. They're probably the most important nu metal band who I have yet to see. Korn, devastating live band, always brilliant. Yeah. Nightwish, not my cup of tea, but they're playing Wembley Arena in about a week's time. Yeah. I know a lot of people going are excited. Yeah. Since Nightwish, I don't know, Nightwish released an album in 2011, 2012 called Imaginarium, and since then their popularity in the UK has skyrocketed. Megadeth, always solid booking, great back catalogue. Motorhead have had their problems. Like we all know, Motorhead have played Donington and tour all the time, every year. However, Lemmy's got health problems. Yeah. And when he sings, you can't work out a word he's saying. I know you could say it's always been like that, there's a difference. He doesn't look into it. Yeah. And it just seems to me to be repetitive. It sounds bad. But the reason why they booked them, or the reason why Andy Copping has booked Motorhead, is how many more times you're going to see him. Yeah.
Exactly. Like Motorhead, at the rate they're going, I mean, they used to be, as you once said, all reliable. But I think every single, thing. Like, Motorhead may well be all reliable in terms of what they do, proficiency-wise, and professionalism for most bands out there, but they've been going around pretty much as long as Judas Priest have. Lemmy was probably there a bit before Priest actually took off, but Priest have definitely made a name for themselves as being more consistent with keeping up to date, and yeah, like their new guitarist, don't remind me his name.
Richie Faulkner.
Yeah, Richie Faulkner. He breathed, as you said, new life into the band that I saw actually come out. Like, essentially, he was the sweat-soaked phoenix that basically lifted all the other guys up and brought them back, fully energized, fully back to where they were, with a lot more youth and energy. Like, you would expect, a band like them, in general, to not really be able to keep up. But Halford still sings brilliantly. Like, I can't tell the difference between the first ever album he released and that first time I saw him actually perform, which was, that was literally just 13 days ago.
Oh, no, very much.
And it's just, sorry, I'll just finish off by saying, and I feel a little bit sorry for, a lot of people that actually do have to go out there and see a band that they know so well to be so reliable, and yet they just see something that boggles the mind completely. So I will go over to download, I will see Motorhead, I will try and make sure I keep an open mind, because I am an optimist, I am incurably optimistic at times, but I am still a realist in that sense. I want to not get my hopes up too high, but I don't want to put them so low that I'm just going to end up punching myself in the face for stupidity at the end.
I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. Who wants to see Motorhead for the first time and be disappointed? Because the first time that I saw Motorhead was 2010 at Southampton Guildhall with Michael Monroe from Hanoi Rock supporting. Yeah. And that day, Motorhead's indoor show was a racket. Yeah. It wasn't just a racket, it was intense. The band were great. The band were on form. The album they were supporting was great as well. Yeah. I think it was called The World Is Yours. I remember that being a good album. Yeah. So the first time I saw Motorhead, I was blown away. And then about 3-4 times after that, because I'm lucky, I've seen Motorhead about 8 times, but that's because they are old reliable. Yeah. They come to Southampton, Bournemouth, Portsmouth every year. They're always at Download or Sonosphere. I saw them in Hyde Park supporting Sabbath. Yeah. They also played Glastonbury this year. Yeah, but Lemmy, I don't think that went down too well.
Yeah, apparently Lemmy was at the Lemon Grove back in Exeter, where I used to live a while back before I came back here. And I found that a bit hard to believe, but that was before I realised there were some bands that do small venues, just because, for whatever reason, it helps to make a secret show a big thing.
Oh, very much. And also, we've got to mention this. Rest in peace, Phil the Animal Taylor, Motorhead's original drummer, who died a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Let me tell you this, right? Like I mentioned, I love Motorhead, and their original lineup, the trio of Lemmy, Phil the Animal Taylor, and Fast Eddie Clarke, created that sound, made their best music, because all of their best songs in the set were done by that three. Yeah. And as soon as the other two either left or got fired,
Yeah.
Motorhead was still awesome, but they didn't create albums that were getting better. Every album that Motorhead made up to Ace of Spades or Iron Fist were absolutely brilliant, and they just kept improving. The same way that Megadeth did, the same way that Iron Maiden did, the same way Metallica did. They just got better and better.
Yeah.
But with Motorhead, as soon as that original lineup for me collapsed, like, okay, the original lineup is not the longest serving they've ever had.
Yeah.
Their current one is. However, the current one, in terms of the music that they've made compared to the original Motorhead, with Phil the Animal Taylor on drums, is their best. So he shall forever be remembered as the Motorhead drummer.
Yeah.
So, gotta say rest in peace to Phil. I never got the chance to see him, but that's because, I don't think he's been in Motorhead since I've been alive. So there you have it. But anyway, anything you want to add about Motorhead?
Yeah, I think I'll just say this much again. Rest in peace to you, because actually, Phil the Animal Taylor, I really, really hate seeing anybody die out there. But I feel sad to hear that. I really do. Like, I just feel so bad about knowing that such a person who could actually be known as, the part of the original trio, any one of them, it would almost really... I mean, Lemmy's been there longer. He's actually the face of the band, so his legacy by default probably expands longer than those guys, but rightfully, if they were still all together, they'd all be there. They'd all be together, and they'd all be regarded probably in co-unison, just how iconic Lemmy is, because, like, I want to see this band, I want to see them at their best, and just talking about all the best stuff from, like, their back catalogue, I think this is actually just something that really does get me desperate to just see a band that will not disappoint, and hearing stuff about Motorhead, like, I don't want to see a band like them potentially fall far. Something which I feel bad just saying.
Totally. You need to remember that Lemmy is 70 years... Actually, on Christmas Eve, which is his birthday, he's going to be 70 years old.
Christ.
Yeah, and to play music that intense and that fast, you need to have something fueling you, and that's why if Lemmy comes off the road, he will die.
Yeah.
That's what people think. They think that if Lemmy stops drinking Jack and Coke a day, bottle of Jack and Coke, or whatever, like, I've heard stories. I've actually seen the film, but I haven't seen it for years.
Yeah, I have. I only just saw it recently, about 6 months ago, actually. I even got that for my mate's birthday, but basically, Lemmy ends up drinking his signature drink of Jack and Coke, working on his music. It's just such a natural thing to him as breathing, and
designing his boots. Yeah, that was cool.
And designing his boots, because Lemmy is an artist on so many different scales, and like, let's put it this way, the lad doesn't know how to stop, because, well, genetically, it's like saying, to a person, stop breathing. Like, Lemmy would probably not understand the concept of what you're saying, and don't get me wrong, if he could do it differently, I'm pretty sure he would, but he doesn't know how. And when his doctor ended up, and I found this out in Kerrang a while back, but basically, it said in a story about Lemmy, defining him as the dictionary definition of rock and roll in the top X number of rock stars. Ozzy Osbourne was at the top, just so you know, but Lemmy basically arrived there as the dictionary definition of rock and roll, and his doctor told him to drink some more water and less Jack and Coke. Do you know how he said yes? Fair dues then. I won't stop drinking Jack and Coke, but I'll drink more water. He put in ice. Ice is water, isn't it?
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, one thing I will say, if anyone has a problem with Motorhead being on this year's download bill, terrible. That you can't... Motorhead, how many more... This might be their final Donington appearance, like Sabbath and Maiden. So, give them their due. They're third from top on the main stage.
Yeah.
They are where they should be, because there's no way they could go on after Korn. Korn would rip them to pieces.
Yeah.
and Rammstein will rip any band to pieces who go on before them. So for me, the Motorhead, Korn and Rammstein thing works, and if you're getting a day ticket, like a friend of mine is planning to, you're in for a good stuff so far. Other bands you've got on the lineup, we haven't mentioned Disturbed yet. I haven't seen Disturbed.
Actually, we mentioned Disturbed, but we didn't go into context.
Yeah, with Disturbed, I'm not a fan. However, I will watch them because I haven't seen them, and they do have some tunes that are good for like rock nightclub dance floor. Well, I'm looking forward. Down with the Sickness. I've heard it a million times. It'll be quite fun live. The reason why I'm not that's the thing. I'm not a fan, but I'll still watch them. And Matt is the same. If we don't like a band, like it depends actually. I'd say in 2012 I watched Black Veil Bride's main stage at Download. I'm not a fan. However, it's interesting. How will they go down on the main stage? And it didn't go down well because they got bottles thrown at them and they were rusty live. Disturbed will be good live. The crowd will have like a rave kind of fists in your air, sing along kind of thing. But I will watch them because it's interesting. They are one of the biggest bands of the 21st century in metal music. And they've released a lot of records. In the US, I think they've had about 5 #1 albums. They're a band that I've never seen, and they've been on hiatus for 5 years. So at least you can, even if you're not a fan, you can still enjoy a band's set by being in the audience. You know, it's a bit like, I'm not into 30 Seconds to Mars. I saw them at Download in 2013 before Rammstein. I like a couple of their songs. A bit like I like a couple of Disturbed songs. I thought 30 Seconds were rubbish, as did all of my campmates. However, with Disturbed, I'm willing to watch them. I haven't seen them. They're an important band of that. Okay. Actually, important might not be the right word. They were a big band of that time where a lot of new metal's defining songs were from that band. And so that's why they're worth seeing. The reason why I'm not a fan is because they make a lot of stupid noises in their songs. Like they do, oh wow, and like a lot of like kind of like reggae kind of singing, which is like, let's go to the place where I go over here. Wow. Like it's a bit. I feel like it's a bit like a bit stupid. I know you could say that about Korn, but there's a difference. Korn's like appeal to a different kind of rock audience, like the generations. Let's just say that Korn have more appeal to 15-year-olds today than Disturbed. And Disturbed to me are in the same league as like the Drowning Pools, the Cold Chambers. There was actually a band that me and you saw the other night in Southampton who supported Skindred. Oh, what were they called?
I'm trying to remember, but it slipped my mind.
It's
if we can't remember,
Head PE. Head PE. They were actually actually we're going to talk about that gig in a sec because that was actually next on what we were going to talk about. But Disturbed, to me they fall like Head PE, Disturbed, Cold Chamber. There was a lot of like new metal bands. Obviously, Disturbed still have an audience. They could probably still play Brixton Academy, Hammersmith, Southampton Guildhall. They could probably still fill those places. But to me, their music is very much dated. I know there are other bands like I'm not gonna lie, I love System of a Down, and when I hear them, I do think it does sound a bit dated, but it's extremely timeless. And to me, Disturbed were just another new metal band with a lot of really big songs. And that's it, really. And I think, you know, in my opinion, a band like Skindred, who I think have actually toured with Disturbed, rip them to pieces. And that actually. Before we go on to that, let's talk about a few other bands at Download, Matt.
Because like you've said a few that you're looking forward to or not so much. But with me, I mean, for me, the main ones that really stand out for me at the moment are Skillet and Saxon and Hailstorm, just because, well, I like seeing, the concept of any band which actually has managed to stand the test of time, like Priest or Motorhead or Sabbath or any of the major headliners that we know have been going around for years. And also, well, Skillet, there's a by default sense of fascination, but we'll get into this in a bit more depth. But also, newsflash, I'm a Christian, so Skillet definitely does target my audience in terms of what it is I actually believe in. And Saxon in particular, I want to see a band that can actually just, give me a full taste of, something from the new wave of British heavy metal, which I feel needs to come into another, I want to see a heavy metal renaissance because of what we've actually been discussing so far.
Oh, totally. Another thing about Download, it shows you what a big festival it is when you've got an incredibly legendary band like Saxon so down on the bill.
Yeah.
And another thing about Saxon, Old Reliable live. I'm not on about Old Reliable touring. I've seen Saxon 3 times, blown my head away every time I've seen them. And if they're supporting Motorhead in, I think it's January or something, on Motorhead. Okay, Motorhead are doing a 40th anniversary tour with Saxon and Girls' School. Mm-hmm. Saxon are going to blow Motorhead away every evening. Guaranteed. A bit like when I saw Motorhead, Anthrax supported Motorhead. Of course Anthrax are going to blow them away.
Yeah.
And I think Saxon... Actually, I'll tell you what, the only time that I've seen Saxon support a band, they were supporting Judas Priest, but they were Priest, though, are another incredible live band from that era.
Yeah.
So Saxon blow most bands away. And I was saying about Black Veil Brides in 2012, Saxon were on before Black Veil Brides and blew them the fuck away.
Yeah.
And Saxon, I don't know, it doesn't actually say on the Download bill what stage they're on yet, but I know for a fact that I hope to see them, as do you, Matt, and I think they're going to be brilliant. And they're not the coolest band in the world, but they have a back catalogue of tunes that you can bang your head to, sing along to, and, you know, there'll be a lot of oldies in that crowd, but there's a difference. Back then, records actually sold. And Saxon's chart listing is quite impressive, actually. They've had a lot of hits. They've had a lot of successful records. They've actually had a lot of records.
Yeah.
I think Saxon have probably about 30 studio albums, which is mental.
Yeah.
People forget things like that, you know.
Yeah, and actually, that's another thing. Like, you see so many bands that have just been going around for decades. You forget to really judge them all fairly because, well, obviously, Sabbath, they were the initiation of what eventually became the industrial sound of metal and most subgenres, but if you take a look at, some of the stuff that they've been outdone by, like sheer numbers of albums, like I can't remember the exact number of Sabbath albums out there, but I'm pretty sure that Saxon have either closed the gap impressively within less time, or they've probably even long surpassed them by now. I may be wrong, and I'm not expecting to be right, but it wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. Because, obviously, a lot of that can come down to routine, but also, Sabbath made most of their more consistent albums, like, year after year. During a time like when they were initially breaking it big, and then after that it was just album upon album upon album.
Yeah, it was. They were like Motorhead. They reached a point in about 83, 84 where the hits stopped, like Motorhead. And in a way, like, sort of like Priest, but Priest still had tunes after that, like Painkiller. Yeah. But like with Saxon and Motorhead, they're from the same era. They're from the same scene, and they toured with each other back in the day. Yeah. And they toured together about 5, 6 years ago, and they're touring together now again, which is brilliant. Yeah. Similar to Def Leppard and Whitesnake. And the thing is, as well, like on this list of bands playing, a few of these bands I've seen. Some of these bands me and Matt don't know. Yeah. We're sorry that we don't. Unfortunately, we don't work for Metal Hammer. We wish we did for a living, but we don't.
Because then I would basically be getting into constant confrontation with a lot of people that probably come in with, like, the way how there are some metalheads that we like to think of ourselves as logical people, but we have met a few people in our times that are biased.
Oh, totally.
And that was before we even met each other 12 weeks ago.
Yep, and we've met a few people at uni like that too, haven't we, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not going to point names out there, but we just know of those people all too well.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, this podcast was partly inspired. Like, this podcast isn't totally original, by the way. Like, we were influenced to do this by That Metal Show, Eddie Trunk. That's Not Metal, Hill and Bees. Yeah. The Metal Hammer podcast, which was Gill and Bees. Yeah. And later, Stephen Hill, Amit, and Merlin. Like, all this stuff I enjoyed listening to whilst chilling out and forgetting about the stresses of the real world. And, and on podcasts like that, they were honest. And honesty makes, in our opinion, for good listening. Yeah. And we don't want to totally slate bands. We're going to be honest of our opinion of them. But at the same time, we will explain what we think of them, why we think people like them, and what we think about them in the long run and future albums.
Yeah.
Like Matt really likes Hailstorm.
Yeah.
I used to like Hailstorm, but the last time I saw them, I thought they were rubbish.
Yeah.
So and that, unfortunately, will I see them at Download? Possibly. Hopefully they can win me over. But after the last performance, I'm not thrilled about hearing new music or seeing them, but I don't want to give up on them because they're a young band. Young bands deserve a chance. There's some older bands, however, who still tour and still make loads of money and still sell out arenas and stuff, but unfortunately can't quite hack it live. Hailstorm, I heard the night that I saw them at Southampton Guildhall in March that Lizzie's voice wasn't... Apparently she had a cold or something. But the thing is, the night before, I saw a band who are not playing Download so far, Papa Roach, who have that back catalogue of 15 years of big hit songs that get circle pits, sing-alongs, people losing their shit, and Hailstorm just said everyone stood there with a voice that wasn't as powerful as on record or previous times that I've seen them, because I've seen Hailstorm about 3 times as well. Other bands on the lineup, Shinedown. Shinedown have gone... I'll tell you what... Yeah. Shinedown's announcement went down really positively to some of the people at uni who are going to Download who I've met. Yeah. Shinedown are a great live band. They've got great songs. However, I can understand why people don't like them because, unfortunately, they do, in a way, fall into the generic Nickelback world. And technically, I know any genre of music can be generic, but with Shinedown, it's like 80s rock mixed with like grunge music, kind of put together in a way that so many bands have done. Like almost like the American Idol Chris Daltrey guy. Yeah. It's kind of like that, but a bit heavier. And like, I don't know, just listen to Enemies. In my opinion, Enemies is by Shinedown is the most generic hit kind of rock song I've ever heard. But Shinedown for me are the best of the bunch because when I saw them live, they blew me away. Yeah. I'm not into Nickelback. I know that Nickelback are meant to be incredible live, but fucking that Rockstar song just did too much of me.
I mean, in defense of Chad Kroeger, and yes, I will say this because I am actually a Nickelback fan, but I will say this much. What Nickelback really do with their music is they actually target their music kind of the same way how a business would target their market, if you like. They set themselves up as, not a brand. They really do label themselves as a rock band, but they go for it in the way how a businessman would go for a very big risk. And actually, I think one of the biggest things that probably causes confusion is their songs, like some of their heavier songs, if you really get into their albums, you will understand they do have a lot of less family-friendly stuff. That Rockstar song was really just an unfortunately popular song that people probably took the wrong way.
Oh, totally.
It's just satiring. They even admitted they were satiring themselves.
Oh, no, I agree. I just think that... the thing is, Nickelback have actually got some really good heavy songs.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, like, I know it's good, but okay, we have a Wednesday night thing here called Bop at uni.
Yeah.
And if Rockstar came on, even in that kind of place that plays One Direction, everyone would sing along, and then we would put on Burn It to the Ground, and no one would do anything. Everyone would go out for smokes and drinks.
Yeah. I mean, Nickelback essentially have a magnetic relationship that either pulls one way towards the heavy stuff that people of, the major chart recommendations can't actually listen to without getting a bit cringeworthy because, Chad Kroeger's theme is essentially North American lifestyle, and North America, not USA, because they're actually from Canada. And they're about as far away from your typical, Canadian artist, with your hockey sticks and your lumberjack hammers, Worst Canadian accent I've ever tried to pull off, but you get the idea. They're not essentially stereotypes. They're essentially a generic example of people from the US, not the US, sorry, North America, and they want to label themselves as the band.
Are Nickelback Canadian?
Yeah, I just said North America. I made a mistake there, and
That's cool, man. Carry on.
Yeah, basically, they want to sell themselves to an audience that they know definitely exists, but also they do it in such a way that you've actually got to give them credit where credit's due. They have a soft side, which is the family-friendly radio stuff, and they also have the side which people don't want to listen to. But it takes balls, for them to actually make it big and then also have a back catalogue of things that you just do not expect. And I think actually a lot of those people that like their chart stuff, they actually get a really big shock, but also it's a positive thrill for them because it gives them a bit of an eye-opener into some of the harder, more damaging and probably a bit more typical hard rock and heavy metal themes in some of their other songs. It's one of those things that, by sheer bad circumstance, they have, in my opinion, a hit and miss relationship because their fandom is actually kind of hit and miss depending on what their fascination is. And that's just my opinion. Is there any challenge that you've got there?
I'll tell you what, because we're on the subject of download and it was Shinedown-y, generic-y, Nickleback-y, because Nickleback are the kings.
Yeah.
The way that Kiss are the kings of shock rock, Nickleback are the kings of 21st century generic bullshit. I'm saying that because I'm not a fan, I'm not into Nickleback.
Yeah.
However, I can understand in a way why people are, because they do write great songs, the same way that Bon Jovi do.
Yeah.
The same way that Bryan Adams used to. And... Or I could even say the same way that Bon Jovi used to. I can actually say that as well.
Yeah.
This is my opinion, obviously, like I said. But this is being on the subject of this, Matt.
Yeah.
Nickelback have never been booked for download, even though I guarantee you that if Andy Copping offered Nickelback a headline slot at Donington, of course they'd take it. But you know why he doesn't book them? Because they pulverise people. And there's a difference. Unfortunately, I don't know actually. I think if Nickelback got booked next year, I reckon the crowd wouldn't... Okay, the download crowd aren't as harsh as they used to be.
Yeah.
Like, I've been to Download where there's been bottling. In Download 2007, a headliner got bottled.
Yeah.
Yeah, My Chemical Romance got bottled. I know that...
Yeah, My Chemical Romance aren't really my thing, but I still wouldn't bottle them.
Oh no, we wouldn't, but unfortunately, that, like, 10 years ago, or 10, 12, 8 to 10 years ago, people used to bottle a lot more than they do now. This year, everyone said Muse was a terrible booking. Muse aren't my favourite band in the world. I don't own any CDs, but I've obviously heard a lot of their music.
Yeah.
And after watching Glastonbury 2010 with my brother on TV, I was like, they're probably the best live band in the world, and I've never seen them. And I remember thinking, if they ever played to a hard rock audience, they'd be absolutely fine. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that if Nickelback played to a Download crowd, they'd be the same.
Yeah.
Would I want them at Download? Yes and no. No, because I'm not a fan, but yes, because it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting to know how it would go down.
Yeah.
And
I would basically just say on that, I would want to see it there on both ends. I mean, I wouldn't want to see a band that I actually like get booed, but it is an experiment I'm willing to try, and also I would pay there as a genuine fan to go and see them. But also, people, just so you know, me and Alex, we're good friends, we have a lot of similar interests and opinions, but we do have our differences that we can respectfully disagree about.
Oh, totally.
Like, he, is perfectly cool with me holding my opinion, explaining it the way I do, but I'm perfectly cool at the same time with him still saying what he thinks about the band, because at the end of the day, I think metalheads in general, like, there are the logical kind, and then there are the ones that probably fit more into your typical football fans. Like, essentially...
Deluded.
Yeah, the deluded. Basically, you've got the type that would call it irrelevant, which are the football equivalent of the metal fandom, and then after that you've got the rugby equivalent, which are the gentlemen. You may still get a few of them that mouth off and swear, and maybe even a few in the pub that would get all like, stick your chariot up your ass if you're a Welshman bashing the English, but at the same time, it's just, if anything, we take it as respectful banter.
Oh, totally. And the reason why we've actually called this brand new podcast the Irrelevant RockCast, because the majority of people at university won't know what this is.
Yeah.
They probably won't get a chance to hear it, and it may not even appear in front of them. But if it did, it would be irrelevant.
Yeah.
Which is why, for that reason, we have decided to call it this. And also, to a lot of the bands we talk about, some metalheads at uni or whoever might want to listen to this, and then they might think to themselves, oh, they're talking about a band I don't like, this podcast is now irrelevant. So that's why we called it the Irrelevant RockCast, because we just thought it was irony to an extent.
And irony works brilliantly for this kind of purpose.
Oh, very much so, yeah. But anyway, going back to Download, other bands playing at Download we've got here, We got Twin Atlantic, normally a Reading Festival band. I don't think they've played Download before, I may be wrong. A band I've yet to see. I've got a couple of friends actually from Southampton who love them. Killswitch Engage, I'm happy about. They are Download regulars. But with Jesse Leach as frontman, who rejoined them in 2012, I prefer him as a frontman to Howard Jones. Howard Jones was important for the time but got lazy. Jesse is more working class, more relatable to myself. Down, I'm very much looking forward to seeing, because I missed them in 2013 because I was watching Europe with my friends so that we could go do-do-do-do.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Would you see Europe if they were at Download?
Yeah, I would, just because I think everybody wants to see them, even if they're not the world's biggest fan of their music. I don't even know what the appeal is. I think the final countdown, and then that's just the one song you want to be able to sing along to live, because it's an arena rock anthem. And then, I mean, the song I really want to see played live, to be honest, is Rock the Night.
Rock the Night's played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't get enough of that. And
No, totally.
when I'm in a good mood. Like,
Go
it's
for it.
that and Lost Highway by Bon Jovi that are basically my feel-good anthems.
Nice one. Also, Billy Talent, they were last there in 2012. They were excellent. They enjoy being on stage. You can tell they're a happy band, and if their crowd are happy and they play the hits, people are happy, they'll most likely be a main stage band. I'm not going to list all the bands there, but I can if you guys would like to hear it. But if you've got a poster and if you'd like Download on Facebook, the Amity Afflection, I don't really know them. Counting Days, don't really know them. What was it? I mentioned Down, didn't I? Rival Sons, I saw them support Deep Purple the other night. They're very talented. They've got a big following. Not my thing at all. First time I saw them supporting Judas Priest in 2011, saw them supporting Blackstone Cherry in 2012. They've played 2 or 3 Downloads now. They've never hit the main stage, but they've always been second. Ghost, they're a band that have a big following. They seem to get bigger every year. It wouldn't surprise me if they're main stage. Tremonti, I missed it Download last year. Mark Tremonti, just in case you guys didn't know, is the guitar player from Alter Bridge. He is one of the best guitar players in the world. He used to play guitar for Creed. Currently for Alter Bridge, or since Alter Bridge started in about 2003 or whatever it was. He is absolutely amazing. He's a great singer as well. Haven't seen his band yet. Missed them at Download last year. Must see for 2016 Download for sure. Neck Deep, they're a band, more of a Reading kind of audience, but for sure, they're playing Southampton Guildhall next year. They will definitely be down. They're probably playing Brixton as well. Attila, never listened to them, but I know some people who like them. Don Broco, they seem to have a kind of mass appeal that they could play any festival, kind of like the Prodigy and Biffy Clyro. They have that. And Mallory Knox, they could play any festival, really. They've got that appeal to different kind of audiences, different kind of festivals. Gojira, saw them at Sonosphere 2011. Yeah, all I can say is intense, big circle pits, French metal. I haven't actually seen them in 4 years, and when I first saw them, I'd never listened to them properly. Had listened to them since. Hopefully we'll see them. Depends who they clash with. Big problem at Download, as we know every year, but you've just got to manage your time right and make sure you see as many bands as possible if you love music, the way me and Matt do anyway. And I'll tell you what, the last band that I'm going to mention, and we'll talk about them because it was Matt's first ever gig, Skindred, are on the Download lineup. First gig, what do you think?
Wow.
Sorry, just to clarify, Matt's just started eating something.
I had a bit of beef chow mein left over, but moving on. Yeah, for a first gig, it was a great eye-opener, plus it was the first time I'd actually been to Southampton in God knows how long since I was a kid. Because, 15 years living down in the West Country, not exactly the best way of keeping in touch with the gateway to the world, which is what Southampton's nickname is as a city and its status. But great venue for a small venue, just for a first time event. And Skindred just knew how to really put on a good show that really was intense, and wow. I mean, I could probably write a better, more formal review, but it was just a great eye-opener to what I've been missing out on. And I'm not saying that I've wasted my life since then, because I've got up to date with all my stuff the same way everyone does. I even jumped ahead of the curve from some people, but yeah, Skindred, that was a great first gig. It really was. It gave me a lot. Benji, great frontman, and yeah, I just can't really get over the thrill of my first 2 gigs, really.
Totally. I've seen Skindred a number of times now. I've seen them in small venues, big venues, and festivals. This was their biggest ever UK headline tour, where they were playing all concert halls, including a sold-out Brixton Academy in London. That is always a highlight of your career if you manage to sell that place out. As a headliner or a support act, Skindred have played a few supports there, like Rob Zombie, I remember, in 2011. But Skindred's first ever headline performance was absolutely brilliant. However, I have a couple of criticisms. Sound at Southampton Guildhall, the acoustics is rubbish. Not for every band, but for some. That night, the sound wasn't perfect. There were problems. The other thing which was frustrating in a way for me is that you would think now at the Skindred stage in their career that Southampton Guildhall and concert halls in general, they are that big now to fill them. Southampton Guildhall was half full. And it's upsetting to know that I've been in Skindred crowds where I've been crushed in, busy, and there's still loads of tickets available. And it's a shame because, you know, I saw Bullet for My Valentine a few months ago at Guildhall, and that was full. And you'd think that Skindred would be, for especially for metalheads and live music fans, Skindred would sell around the same number of tickets, especially in Southampton where Skindred have a big history. And it just didn't, and it just, me and Matt were stood there, and there was loads of space around us, and yeah, like, I know you could get closer and stuff, but I just don't like being in a room that's half full when you know that Skindred are better than that, you know? And I know you could say, oh, well, who cares about the audience, let's look at the band, and whatever, but your experience it's a bit like if you see a band in the rain, you'd rather see them not in the rain, and you'd rather be in a busy crowd than a dead crowd. Yeah. That's just the way it goes, and Skindred's music, as we know, is extremely versatile. It's got elements of hard rock, heavy metal, dubstep, hip-hop, reggae, what else?
Yeah, like, you name it, they'll probably incorporate it. I mean, Benji, there isn't much that I think that guy can't do, is there?
No, not at all, and very working-class band, and I've met the band, they're gentlemen. Yeah. They don't say no to things. They'll play any stage, any time, any festival. They just love playing live, and they appreciate their fans, they appreciate where they are, and they don't seem to do too much moaning like other bands in the press. Yeah. You know, and I think for a first gig, Skindred, for you, Matt, Skindred at Southampton Guildhall, absolutely brilliant. Yeah. It was a great night overall. Crossfaith, support band just before them, unbelievable. Japanese metal. I saw them support Limp Bizkit actually at Southampton last year, and they were brilliant then.
Yeah, Japanese music in general is just amazing. In the sense, it's just fascinating.
Frantic, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, also, some of the lyrics there, you almost get the impression they don't make sense in English because, well, you may think maybe that's just because, you know, the way how Japanese and English don't really translate the same way to make sense in each other's languages, you know, grammatically to what we're used to. But actually, it's just like Japanese music in general has this weird consistent feel that you are seeing something very surreal in all of Japanese art, and it's no better highlighted in anime or music in general. Like, anime actually is probably the place where you'll see most of it make sense, and even then it's still a bit of a mystery, but it's fascinating to see that stuff.
Very much so. Yeah. And I think both Skindred and Crossface performances were absolutely brilliant, but like I said, we just wanted more people there, and there wasn't, which is the next gig. I know we spoke about it a lot, so we'll try cut it down for time, but Judas Priest played Portsmouth Guildhall, which is tiny, nowhere near as big as Southampton Guildhall. It was, it didn't say sold out, but it was very busy, and we were enclosed in people. And when Matt arrived, Matt kind of looked around the room, and I remember you saying, "What are Priest doing here?" You know what I mean? Like, Judas Priest are very much used to playing to a lot more people, and Portsmouth Guildhall is Still a concert hall, but it's still small.
Yeah.
And to see a band that incredibly legendary and ticket prices that expensive at an event, you're almost treated. Because it's almost irony to Skindred. Skindred, a popular rock band playing a big venue and can't fill up. And then you got Judas Priest playing this. It should have been the opposite. You should have had Skindred playing Portsmouth Guildhall and Judas Priest playing Southampton Guildhall.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it was just like, I mean, I was impressed by the architectural structure of the city in general, because Portsmouth is rough, but it has great character, and nowhere is it more highlighted than in a lot of their older buildings, because they're well preserved. They have legacy and character, but it's like size, biggest isn't always best, but this is one occasion where, the size of, the whole place would be a lot better off, filled up, if it was much, much bigger. And actually, Soton over Pompey any day. I think Halford should have probably booked the area there, and as much as I loved what Skindred did, they're not as popular, and thus, it did feel kind of empty, as you did say. So they would have probably got more people to fill up to make them more satisfied with the night in Portsmouth than they would have done in Southampton.
Very much so.
Whereas Priest would have probably tripled the size of, whatever they had, they would have made it overflowing regardless what venue. Like, if you see a seat, in my opinion, left, unattended in Wembley, I would probably say, well, this is probably just a very unfortunate thing, but Priest, you'd expect them to fill seats and have people
they did.
stuck there.
They played Wembley in 2009. Like, they did have Megadeth as their support, and Testament. They're quite legendary band.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's interesting, because I remember us talking before about how Judas Priest are in many ways more important than Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't mean they're better. It doesn't mean that they influenced as many bands, but they were the first important, significant heavy metal bands to introduce twin lead guitar and introduce leather to the genre of metal music.
Yeah.
And obviously we know the irony, obviously, of Rob Halford, like for years the rumours about him being gay or not, and then in the 90s when he wasn't in Priest, him coming out, people just applauded him for it.
Yeah.
And his performance the other night for Priest, and he's sick, like he's in his early 60s, and all I can say is his performance was as good as any vocal performance I've seen all year by any band, and you can only give him credit for that. And like the funny thing is that it was awesome that they managed to fit in that stage show and the motorbike on a stage that wasn't really that big.
Yeah.
And also Michael Schenker's band were good.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, and also don't forget what their front man, what's his name again? The front man.
Unfortunately, Matt, I don't know the name of the front man for Michael Schenker's band.
Yeah, all we can say is the fact that he will always probably give off is that he is from Motherwell, which is in Scotland, and they have a shite football team.
Oh yeah, he did say that a couple of times. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great night though. Like Priest in Portsmouth, we did kind of on the train journey back. We were kind of like, wow, that was awesome.
Yeah, and it's one reason actually, like looking back at the whole night, seeing Schenker's band and also taking a look at Priest, like it reminds me a bit actually, Scorpions, like one of the reasons I think you said, just giving a quick note here to people, that they don't tend to headline festivals here like down.
No, or Priest, they don't either.
Yeah,
or Alice Cooper.
Yeah, well, yeah, but like Scorpions don't do it because they're not a big enough band over here. They're a bigger band worldwide than they are in a specific place. Like, I think that's probably just what really gets me and a couple of people I know surprised about that, because you expect them really just to have, a legacy that, they've stood the test of time for as long as they have done. We want to see them in a festival as a headliner or as something, just because we know they won't accept anything less than a headline act, because they feel they're big enough to play it. Me and a couple of other fans do feel that way too, but it's probably better they just settle for a supporting stage position if it's really all they're going to get.
Oh, very much so. I think, I was actually listening to an Andy Copping, who books Download Festival, interview the other day, and he was saying, people are moaning about me booking Iron Maiden, but if they're free, available, and there's no one else, of course I'm going to book them. And when Priest got booked for Download in 2015 and I saw them, it was a breath of fresh air because they hadn't played Download for years, and they're many better sub-headliners than Judas Priest. Yeah. With that back catalogue, that stage show, and that voice and those guitars, incredible band. And I'll tell you what, I think I actually mentioned this to you before, Matt.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why Priest were playing like smaller venues as such on this tour was because, unfortunately, Priest did one bad thing. They did lie to us. They did say 2011 would be the farewell tour, but like you mentioned earlier on in this podcast, Richie Faulkner has breathed new life into that band where they thought, we've got this new guy, he's incredible. We want to make music with him. Yeah. And so a lot of people packed out bigger venues to go and see Priest on the farewell tour. Yeah. And because Priest are back so soon, you know, people might think, now I missed this tour or whatever, but it was an incredible evening. And I know you weren't here that night, but a couple of days later I went to Deep Purple in London.
Yeah. And you told me a little bit about how Ian Gillan couldn't actually deliver the same things that he ended up doing in his career on your
The difference is I saw Deep Purple at the O2. The venue was too big. It should have been at Wembley or even Portsmouth Guildhall, to be honest.
So, smaller venue, the better the atmosphere for them.
Yes, and also the fact, the great thing about Judas Priest, they haven't changed at all. They're still intense.
Yeah.
Deep Purple, on the other hand, it was almost like watching Pink Floyd. Now, don't get me wrong, Pink Floyd are incredible. What I mean is, if you listen to any of the early 70s records by Deep Purple, it's intense.
Yeah.
And there was no intensity. Ian Gillan can still sing. You need to remember he is 70. However, okay, they played about 20 songs. 19 of them were, he sang well, but They miss hits out of the set because he can't sing them anymore.
Yeah.
Child in Time can't sing anymore, they don't play it. Speaking can't sing it anymore. Too fast, too much screaming.
Yeah.
Fireball, probably my favourite song by them, they don't play because he can't sing it anymore. The only song that he can't sing that they still keep in the set is Highway Star, because how can they not play it? They open with it and I just immediately almost cringed because when it's a fast song, it's a rock classic, and he's keeping up, he's running out of breath. After that, the set was fine, but that's because the rest of the set was much slower, much more songs chosen to suit his vocal, and a lot of classics, like the ones I just mentioned, were ignored.
Yeah.
And, Smoke on the Water, he sang, he did well, but you need to remember, slow.
Yeah.
We all came out, it's slower, it's not intense. So Deep Purple are a pioneering band of heavy metal and even speed metal. Deep Purple's music influenced thrash metal.
Yeah.
And to me, watching the band, it was literally like, okay, I can't say dad rock because Priest in many ways are dad rock, and so are Maiden, but Maiden, Priest, Metallica, Megadeth, they've still got that intensity live and that fast, frantic, speedy, let's move and rock out. And with Purple, it was boring, a lot of it. I
can imagine.
Yeah, and it's a shame. And the other thing which frustrated me about the gig is we all know the classic five of Purple. Gillan, Blackmore, Pace, Glover, and Lord. Lord unfortunately died, rest in peace. He died 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
And the keyboard and the lead guitar of Deep Purple is very important. Richie Blackmore, not in the band, hasn't been since the early 90s. He hasn't been playing rock music, but I think he's getting Rainbow back together as far as I'm aware. However, him and Gillan don't get along. The current guitar player from Deep Purple, Steve Morse, I think that's his name, he was running around the stage with his guitar. Good stuff. It's cool. You've been in the band a long time, but the songs you're playing are not yours. Yeah. Take a more backwards position. You're not Richie Blackmore.
Yeah.
I know it's difficult, but for me, you've got 3 significant members from that time still in the band, and it seemed to me like the keyboard player and the guitar player were almost owning the stage, and it's like the other 3 are the guys, not you guys.
Yeah, and...
Apologies about this, guys. Matt's phone's going off.
And I am officially cutting it short.
Good work. That's what we do in this podcast. Yeah. We put this first.
Yeah, we put this
that's
first.
It. So I went and saw Deep Purple. I'm a fan. I'm not a big fan. I have a couple of albums. I do like them. The reason why I like them is because I love singers. Ian Gillan to me is almost like a Paul Rodgers and Ian Gillan, a cool, versatile, screaming vocalist who's iconic and looks the part. And it was great to see him. He still sounded good on the songs he chose to sing, but he can't sing the songs that are intense, as I've already mentioned. And yeah, so I saw them. We've already mentioned the bands that we went to together.
Yeah.
Another thing, I might be going to see The Darkness tomorrow. I know you're gutted you can't go.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, man. Are The Darkness a nostalgia band?
I actually do not understand how I'm meant to answer that question, Alex. Like, what do you mean, a nostalgia band? I mean, I know The Darkness, but I don't know them well enough to even critique them in that fashion.
Okay, since the Darkness 4 years ago in Southampton, they sold out the Guildhall with their reunion. They broke up for about 5 years. The debut album, Permission to Land, was incredible. One of the greatest hard rock debut albums from a British band ever.
Yeah.
I can't actually think of a better album from a British band debut, many. I know you could say Led Zeppelin and Sabbath, but in terms of, like, they won Brit Awards. Yeah. They won Brit Awards, #1 album, extremely popular. Everyone's heard of The Darkness.
Yeah.
But since they've got back together, they've released 2 albums that they did sell, but no one wants to hear those songs live. All people want to hear is Permission to Land and the Christmas song.
Yeah.
And that's why this tour is quite relevant, because it is Christmas time.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, The Darkness, when you go see them live, you hear the songs of Permission to Land, people go nuts. They play other songs, the crowd are quiet. And that's what I mean by, are they a nostalgia band?
Yeah.
Can they release new music that will change them or inspire them to new audiences? I don't know. You know?
I genuinely wouldn't know even how to take a look at it, because, like, I mean, from what I've always known about The Darkness, they actually do have the props, but they've never... I think, actually, what was the main reason that they ended up breaking up again?
Drug problems and conflict, and the brothers. 2 brothers in a band, a bit like the Gallaghers.
Yeah.
Didn't see eye to eye with everything.
Yeah.
A bit like Gillan and Blackmore. They're not brothers, but they don't like each other.
Yeah.
But obviously the brothers did make up. Obviously there was a lot of money involved at the beginning of their reunion. Download 2011, there was more hype about The Darkness' reunion than System of a Down's.
Yeah.
And that's telling you something.
Yeah, like, I think, for what it's worth, they are a band that knows how to bring back suspense, bring back feel. And if that is what you mean by a nostalgia band, like, they definitely will know how to spark up a long-lost memory of a great time. But, I mean, from someone that never really got savagely into them, it just wouldn't do me any difference to actually what would happen if I never got into them and they were still here today. So,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much in that position where I think maybe they are just a nostalgia band, because they only really seem to do the job for the audience they initially established.
Very much so. Another gig that I'm going to this week, guys, on Friday, one that I'm really looking forward to, one that I've had booked for a long time now, since about March, April. Def Leppard, Whitesnake and Black Star Riders at Wembley Arena. Matt, I apologise that you can't be there. I know you're probably gutted inside. Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to go? Like, however, one thing that I was excited. I'm taking my friend Chris with me, good friend of mine. One thing that is important to know: all 3 bands, just in case you guys don't know, Black Star Riders were previously Thin Lizzy, but because Phil Lynnott's not there, because Gary Moore's not there, they thought they'd become a whole new band with a whole new name, but still play Thin Lizzy songs in respect, and also because they were them. Yeah. So it's really good, and it's a very exciting tour. All 3 bands have released new albums in 2015. Surprisingly, the only band out of all 3 of them whose new album I actually like is Black Star Riders.
Yeah.
And they've got a new record called The Killer Instinct. It's absolutely brilliant. I love it. Their debut album, All Hell's Breaking Loose, came out 2013. I love that as well. And when Thin Lizzy became Black Star Riders, I wasn't sure. I did think to myself, why? This might decrease your fan base. You might be playing smaller places by taking the Thin Lizzy name away. However, their new music's actually really good. And Ricky Warwick, their singer's great, I think. Have you listened to this band at all, Matt?
No, I actually haven't even heard of them until you've just brought them up. I mean, I wanted to actually see more about what they were doing, but without Gary Moore and Phil Lynott, I just never really imagined there would be a band, period. Because, like, they were both the voice of Thin Lizzy. They lost 2 essential members, and I mean, essentially, I can't picture the others, probably just due to sheer naivety on what else they could still achieve. And also, partly, again, getting back to the main reason why we built this podcast in the first place, I just don't understand where we're getting all the fuel to make all this great new music that we keep wanting to hear, but we just don't have the people committed to actually investing time and talent and money. I mean, I guarantee on a slightly separate issue that if they just did an experimental project where they completely chose to rebrand the music industry with a completely different genre, say jazz or metal or folk, and I mean like proper folk, the charts would change like crazy and the landscape of music in this country would change overnight.
Very much so. And I recommend, Matt, if you get a bit of time, I know you're a busy guy, but if you get a bit of time over the next few weeks, listen to Black Star Riders. I think you'll like them.
Black Star Riders.
Yeah. If you don't, fair enough. But they're the only band out of the 3 of them whose new album I actually like. Def Leppard, I brought their album a week ago. Disappointed. I love Def Leppard.
Yeah.
Lots of people like them. They've sold a lot of records. Great live band, important band for British music who conquered America in the 80s with 2 albums that I think reached like diamond sales, as well as topping over 10 million in sales in the US alone in the 80s, around the time of Michael Jackson, Madonna, Springsteen, Prince, Stevie Wonder, you know, like all these legends, and Def Leppard sold just as many records.
Actually, I think it's because when you had the king of pop, you had the boss, you had the queen of pop, you had the blind pianist, and you had Prince, and all those other artists as mentioned. There was still left for this room for an American dude, and when I hear Joe Elliott sing, I mean, he is essentially the Brit that managed to fool a US audience into being that US the dude, as in the coolest film character ever, the dude, archetype from The Big Lebowski. Just the way he expresses himself vocally, it's like, you know, mow the lawn. Take out the trash out of your room. Sorry, take out this here. Let's get the rock out of here. Hi, sir. I'm not entirely the best in shape, but my voice is kind of fluctuating between pitches at the moment, so
it's fine. Matt sings for a Def Leppard tribute band.
And
he wishes.
I really do wish that. You stole the words right out of my mouth, mate. But basically, I actually am in this position. Like, Joe Elliott, he fooled a US audience, and they only realised they were paying to see a dude rather than a lad. And they were seeing a lad impersonating a dude. They saw the lad come out just when he waved the Union Jack and spoke in a standard Yorkshire accent. So that's incredible what he did.
Very much so. And I have listened to all of their albums. I think they've got about 10. I like about 7, 8 of them. This latest album is the worst album I've ever heard by them. There's about 12 songs and I like about 2 of them. And let's just say that if they fill up their set on Friday with at least 5 or so from the album, it will be thorns in a rose of a set list, because we all know how many tunes they've got. And it's such a shame because I actually liked Def Leppard's last record, Songs from the Sparkle Lounge. Good album. But this one, I've heard it twice. Okay, not many listens, but with Def Leppard, because they have those big choruses, riffs, catchy, it doesn't take that much to get into them. Like with some bands or albums, you need to play over and over. But with Def Leppard, it hits you because it is essentially like pop rock, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, pop rock, you don't want to use that too much. It definitely hits you harder than what you'd
I know what you mean.
Rock, but it has the same sort of
hair metal-ish.
Hair metal. it's the heaviest form of hair metal you can find, and actually that just
Not Def Leppard. I'd say the heaviest form of hair metal is Wasp.
Well, yeah.
Or something like that. More guitars.
Along those lines, but they were definitely, you know, like, you could tell that those guys came from Sheffield.
Yes.
Couldn't you? It's like, dude, archetype or not, they were a bunch of Yorkshiremen.
They were, and they were influenced by Top of the Pops music from the early 70s, like The Sweet, Slade, Mud, Bowie, even Gary Glitter. And, yeah. Like, I just, awkward moment, but it's fine. But yeah, they were influenced by that music. And the thing is, this latest album, fair play to Def Leppard to keep making music. Actually, it's self-titled. The artwork's great.
Yeah.
The first single, which is called Dangerous, I think, it's a bit of a naff title, but it's pretty Def Leppard in a way. First single I heard, and I thought, this isn't bad.
Yeah.
Heard the rest of the album, not a fan, but I'm looking forward to the tour on Friday. Whitesnake, in my opinion, and Matt as well, made criminal move with their latest record. I mentioned Deep Purple earlier. Coverdale took over from Gillan in the mid-70s.
Yeah, and basically what he ended up doing is, with this new album that he's releasing, it's literally called the Purple Album, and it's basically him just re-recording all the songs that he made, you know, himself. 40
years ago.
Yeah, 40 years ago. He calls it the Purple Album because for him it's the Purple era, the Deep Purple defining point of his career. But, you know, for any Deep Purple fan, that would just be, you know, like, his era. You know, like, the era of David Coverdale for Deep Purple. We don't see it vice versa the way he does. And he's trying to re-establish anything. He's making a pointless statement about himself. Like, dude, we know. Mate, we just get it. We know exactly.
Another thing, I admire Whitesnake for still touring. I admire them for still making new music. And I am a fan. Yeah. I'm not a big fan. I prefer Leopard. I prefer Black Star Riders as well, Thin Lizzy. But Coverdale's vocals aren't what they used to be. I saw them in 2011. His vocals were hit and miss that night. Some songs are fine. When he sings Here I Go Again, it sounds horrible. Kind of like Paul Stanley from Kiss. Anyone who was at Down Low will know what I mean. Yeah. Like, you'd think that Coverdale would have one of those voices that would never go shit, and it did. So him singing Deep Purple songs from 40 years ago, now live on stage, because I've heard from people that half their set is Deep Purple songs that he sang, it will sound, I'm scared, I think it will be horrible. Yeah. Like, I think Black Star Riders could blow Whitesnake off stage.
Yeah, and actually, when Whitesnake re-recorded one of their earlier songs, Here I Go Again, I mean, yeah, that was actually for the better, because I don't know what the controversy was, because there is a clear distinction between hobo and homo. But all they really did was change the rhythm slightly and the pitch and re-establish a new lyric in place.
And the original song was like a bluesy kind of hit, and then they turned it into a hair metal anthem, because Whitesnake's 1987 album, called 1987, was influenced by Slippery When Wet from Bon Jovi, which came out just 1 year previously, and you can tell by the way Coverdale looks in his music videos and the size of those songs on the album. Let's make an album with like 5-6 massive hits on that has huge production that can appeal to pop fans in the 80s that many rock bands did. And that's Coverdale wouldn't change a thing, you know. Yeah. Because let's be honest, how many songs from that album are going to be played on Friday? 4 or 5 at least from 1987.
Yeah, approximately that much, but still, it's like, you know, I just don't understand the point of, you know, him doing the whole Purple album, because
those songs already exist from 40 years ago.
Yeah, and also, like, re-recording songs, period. I don't understand that, because essentially, I told you this before, it's what REO Speedwagon have been reduced to doing. Releasing, essentially, re-releases of their greatest hits that they've just re-recorded. Mm-hmm. So, what? Like, REO Speedwagon, as much as you enjoy listening to a few of their songs from a certain point in time, it's a time that you still have to admit, they are no longer relevant.
No.
Yeah.
I actually know someone who said Judas Priest were irrelevant a few months ago, and I told them off big time. But I'm not going to say who it is. I'm not going to go into it. But yeah, it's
yeah, you told me about this.
Yeah. I like. It depends. It's all down to who you're into. Like, we've probably spent the majority of this podcast talking about Judas Priest, but that's because we've just seen them. The influence is huge, and the bands playing at Download were around when they were, and a lot of bands have been inspired by them.
Plus, it was the night before my 21st birthday.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. And I think, like, with Whitesnake, they're releasing a new album. We want new songs, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Like, we want... Essentially, the whole reason why you make new albums is because you still have material that you're prepared to write for the audience, and essentially, we don't want you to recycle our old curtains and then just cloak everything.
Absolutely,
over.
And also, gotta make this point.
Go on.
Whitesnake's last album, called Forevermore, in 2011, was absolutely brilliant, and I saw them on the Forevermore tour, and Coverdale actually sounded good on those songs because they were recorded at the time his voice sounded like that.
Yeah.
But it was the 80s stuff that sounded fucking horrible.
Yeah.
So that means that Coverdale, let's say Coverdale released 2015 album of all new music, he sings it at Wembley, it will sound fine because that's how we know it sounds. He sings Deep Purple songs from 40 years ago, he's going to sound terrible.
Oh, believe me, yeah. I know exactly how he's going to sound. Essentially... You know, I used to be able to listen to that guy, and I would be like, you know, I can still listen to this, and it can be essentially my therapy when I need to relax. And nowadays, just looking at a couple of clips that I actually looked at after you told me about seeing everything with Coverdale, I was like, oh, give me a break.
Yeah, so this is what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
This is what the bands need to do. Black Star Riders, do what you do, don't change a thing. Whitesnake, don't play Deep Purple songs, they will. And as for Def Leppard, don't play too much from the new album. If they all stick to that, I will be a happy audience member at Wembley Arena on Friday night for my final gig, or playing gig, of 2015. We're going to wrap up this podcast very shortly, but we just want to say that for the future, and if you actually enjoyed listening to this, let us know what you think, what we can improve. We will like questions that we could answer for the future. Obviously, at the moment, we currently have no questions because we currently have no fans apart from ourselves, but hopefully this has started something.
Yeah. And if you have questions, feel free to send them to my Twitter page, Mattanza Mafia-Fedora. Yes, that's all one word. Matt, A-N-Z-A, Mafia-Fedora, with the hashtag the Irrelevant RockCast.
Yes, and we haven't actually made a Facebook page yet, but I'm sure we will very soon. We'll keep you up to date on that. Yeah. In the future, we will next week, we're going to be discussing the death of the late, great Scott Weiland. The reason why we didn't do that today is because there was too much to talk about of stuff we've been up to, and I know his death was very sad, but we will talk about that next week.
Yeah.
We will also talk about Foo Fighters and their fans, and where they currently stand in the future of that band, because we know a lot of people love them. We're going to talk definitely about Guns N' Roses reunion.
Yeah.
More people at uni are interested in Busted's reunion than Guns, which baffles the fuck out of me.
But me, to be fair, yes. Because we remember Busted from our era, but we still don't understand how they even matter by comparison.
Yeah, we do. However, I did like Busted when I was younger, but still Guns N' Roses all the way. Come on, Guns. Axl and Slash makeup. Also, Kiss. Paul Stanley says they're better than ever. They're not. We will go into that as well. We will also talk about a few cities, and we've already done it today actually, but we'll carry on with bands and the cities they're from, and
the rock culture that actually we feel best fits any aesthetic of any major city in the world, such as, for some examples, London, Liverpool, home of the British invasion, Cardiff, Birmingham, and Chicago, Seattle, you name it. Odds are it's a city worth mentioning because of the music scene. We want to get them in, and if you can name it, I mean, Berlin is another example, because obviously capital of Germany, it's quite a big metal culture there. But if you have any suggestions for, you know, points to cover in these topics, or just topics in general you might want us to cover, we'll put them down for shortlist consideration, and yeah, Please.
Totally.
We want to take your suggestions, people.
Very much so. And we do need to wrap up because we are running out of time. But another thing we will definitely mention every week is download, because it is the big thing that we all look forward to every summer, or will be if you're a first timer.
Yeah.
And we will talk about Reading Festival as well and their announcements. And I will talk about how I'm not impressed with their lineup so far. And we will also talk about Twisted Sister. We'll talk about them as well because it's their farewell tour next year.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely discuss them in their only UK show at Bloodstock, and we'll talk about why we love Download, but we know that it's got its bad sides. We will discuss AC/DC having their own stage in 2010. We will also talk about how Twisted Sister actually snubbed Download this year, which they did. A lot of it's money based. We will also talk about why Bill Ward should be playing for Sabbath on drums.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. If we don't talk about it, we'll talk about it at some point over the next couple. It's all time, because me and Matt could talk about this shit for days, couldn't we?
Yeah, we can talk about it. And actually, if you guys were actually prepared to listen to us as much as we are prepared to tell you what we feel, it would be a very great way of actually doing a career. I mean, I've been recommended, to actually do stuff in radio for whatever reason, and Alex just knows his stuff and would actually make a great person to head a program, as far as I can say.
Thank you.
So yeah, pretty much. Remember, hashtag on my Twitter, Mattanza Mafia-Fedora is my Twitter user account. Use the hashtag Irrelevant RockCast.
Very much. Thank you so much for listening. I've really enjoyed it. Matt, have you enjoyed it?
Yes, I have.
Absolutely brilliant. Have a great week, guys, and have a great Christmas. We'll probably have one out before then, but I'll say it anyway because we've just finished uni, and we're actually doing this because, like I said, our assignments are done. So here's to the next week. Cheers, and hope you look forward to the next one. We sure will.
Mattanza out.
And Mr. Dupont out.